Commander Alex Reeves had seen 3 years of brutal warfare between humans and the Sorrel Empire, and he'd learned to expect cruelty from the enemy. The Sorrel were formidable opponents, technologically advanced, ruthlessly efficient, their culture built on conquest and the subjugation of species they deemed inferior, including humans. He'd seen the aftermath of Sorrel attacks on human colonies. Civilian populations decimated, prisoners tortured before execution, entire settlements reduced to rubble not for strategic value, but to send a message about Sorrel dominance. The war had turned vicious on both sides, each species learning to hate the other through years of violence and propaganda, which made his current situation complicated. During a firefight near their forward operating base on Kelvar Prime, Alex's unit had captured a Sorrel soldier. She'd been injured when her escape pod malfunctioned during her squad's tactical retreat, leaving her behind in territory his forces controlled. Standard procedure would be interrogation followed by imprisonment or, in some units, execution, especially given what Sorrel forces did to human prisoners. But looking at her now, the Sorrel woman lying in their makeshift medical bay, conscious and watching him with eyes that expected death, Alex found himself hesitating. She was young, probably around the Sorrel equivalent of early 20s based on his limited knowledge of their aging patterns. Her uniform marked her as regular infantry, not command staff or intelligence. And she was terrified, despite her attempts to hide it behind rigid military discipline. Her ears, those distinctive long Sorrel ears that expressed emotion more clearly than their controlled faces, were flat against her head. His cultural database identified that position as extreme fear mixed with acceptance of anticipated violence. "What is your designation?" Alex asked through his translator, keeping his voice neutral, his weapon lowered but ready. She rattled off what sounded like a serial number in Sorrel military code, her voice steady despite the fear obvious in her ear positions. No name, no rank beyond basic infantry classification. Following her training, provide minimum information, prepare for interrogation, expect execution. "Are you injured?" he asked instead of pushing for intelligence. She blinked, surprise breaking through her disciplined mask. "Why does that matter to you? You will kill me regardless of injury status. Sorrel do not surrender. I failed to escape. Death is appropriate consequence for my failure." Her matter-of-fact acceptance of her own execution made Alex's stomach turn. "We don't execute prisoners, not if they cooperate and don't pose active threat." "You lie, humans kill Sorrel prisoners. We have intelligence reports extensively documenting execution of captured soldiers." Her ears remained flat, but her eyes tracked him carefully, searching for deception. "Some units probably do. War makes people vicious on both sides." Alex signaled his medic forward. "But my unit doesn't. You're injured, you're a prisoner of war, and you'll be treated according to military protocols. That means medical care, not execution." The Sorrel woman watched the medic approach with visible terror. Her ears flattened completely against her skull, her body went rigid despite obvious pain, and she made a sound his translator couldn't process but that clearly communicated suppressed fear. "He's a medic, he's going to treat your wounds, no one here is going to hurt you." Alex kept his voice calm, authoritative. "You're safe. Humans torture prisoners before execution to extract intelligence. I am prepared for pain." She said it with such absolute certainty, such complete belief that his species was capable only of cruelty, that Alex felt genuine anger at whatever propaganda had created this expectation. "We don't torture prisoners. We treat injuries according to medical standards, provide basic humanitarian care, follow rules of war even when the other side doesn't. You're safe here. You have my word." She didn't believe him. That was obvious from her body language, her ear positions, the way she flinched when the medic carefully began assessing her injuries. But she didn't resist, maybe because she believed resistance was futile, maybe because she was in too much pain, maybe because some part of her desperately wanted to believe he was telling the truth. The medic worked efficiently, treating burns and impact wounds from the firefight, stabilizing more serious injuries that would require surgical intervention. Throughout the process, the sorrel woman remained rigid, her eyes never leaving Alex, her ears flat against her head in sustained terror. "She's stable," the medic reported. "Burns are treated, fractures are stabilized, internal injuries will heal with rest. She'll recover fully with proper care." "Good. Set her up in the prisoner facility with appropriate security. Make sure she has water, food, basic comfort items. And make damn sure everyone understands she's to be treated humanely. Anyone who violates prisoner protocols answers to me directly." Over the next week, as she recovered in their makeshift prisoner facility, Alex found himself checking on her regularly, making sure she was receiving adequate care, that his soldiers were following protocols, that she was being treated with basic human decency. And slowly, incrementally, her terror started fading into confusion. "Why do you treat me well?" she asked one day when Alex brought her a meal himself, better rations than standard prisoner fare, something the mess hall had prepared with basic sorrel dietary requirements in mind. "Because you're a person, not just an enemy. Because even in war, there are rules about treating prisoners with basic dignity. Because I don't believe in cruelty for its own sake." Alex set the tray down within her reach, careful to maintain safe distance, not crowding her space. "What's your name? I'm tired of thinking of you as the prisoner in my reports." Sorrel infantry are not permitted to reveal identifying information to enemy forces, but her ears angled slightly toward him, curiosity breaking through her ingrained training. "Why does it matter? I am prisoner number 743 in your documentation systems. That should be sufficient designation for record-keeping purposes. Because you're a person with a name, not just a number in our system. I'd like to know what to call you when I check on your recovery." After a long moment of visible internal debate, she said quietly, "Lyra. My designation before military conscription was Lyra." "Nice to meet you properly, Lyra. I'm Commander Alex Reeves. You can call me Alex if you're more comfortable with informal address." He smiled, trying to appear non-threatening. "How are your injuries healing?" "Why do you care?" She asked it with genuine confusion rather than hostility. "You gain no strategic advantage from my comfort. My information value is minimal. I am basic infantry with limited knowledge of larger military operations. Maintaining me alive costs resources. By any logical calculation, execution would be more efficient than extended medical care. Because efficiency isn't the only consideration. Because I believe even enemies deserve basic humane treatment. Because you're 19 years old. Yes, I checked your medical scans, that's the human age equivalent, and you didn't start this war, you were just conscripted into it." Her ears shot forward, surprise overwhelming her control. "You know my age, you researched my biology. Medical necessary. We needed to know how to treat your injuries properly. Sorrel and human physiology is similar enough for most medical procedures, but different enough that dosages and treatment protocols require adjustment." He paused. "You're very young to be frontline infantry. All sorrel serve mandatory military service beginning at age equivalent of 15. I have been soldier for 4 cycles. This is first time I have been captured." Her ears drooped slightly. "First time I have failed my assigned function." "You haven't failed anything. You survived combat, your equipment malfunctioned, you were injured and captured. That's not failure. That's unfortunate circumstances beyond your control. Sorrel do not accept excuses for failure. I should have fought to death rather than allow capture. By my culture's standards, I am already considered dead, dishonored non-person who brought shame through survival when death was appropriate choice." Alex felt his anger rising, not at her, but at the culture that would train children to believe survival was shameful failure. "Well, by human standards, you made the smart choice. You're alive. recovering from your injuries, and have the opportunity to maybe go home someday when this war finally ends and prisoner exchanges happen. Her ears flattened again. Not fear this time, but what his improving cultural knowledge suggested was profound distress. If I am repatriated to Sorrel forces, I will be executed for failure to die honorably. Capture is unforgivable shame. I am already dead by their standards. You are simply delaying inevitable execution by keeping me alive now. Then don't go back. Stay here, seek asylum, build a life somewhere that won't execute you for the crime of surviving. Alex surprised himself with the suggestion. You have options, Lyra. Your future isn't predetermined. And do what? I am trained as soldier, I know nothing else. And I am Sorrel, your people would never truly accept me even if I did seek asylum. I would be eternal outsider, former enemy, reminder of war. She looked down at her hands. Perhaps quick execution would be more mercy than extended existence in limbo between two cultures that both reject me. Don't say that, don't even think it. Alex moved closer, still respecting her space but near enough to make his sincerity clear. You have value beyond your military function. You're intelligent, you're adapting to impossible circumstances with remarkable resilience. You're worth more than any culture's arbitrary definitions of honor or shame. Why do you care? Her ears angled toward him, that persistent confusion that seemed to define her interaction with him. What purpose does convincing failed Sorrel soldier she has value serve for you? What strategic advantage do you gain from making me believe survival was not shameful failure? No strategic advantage. I just don't like seeing people, any species, believe they're worthless because their culture's toxic value system says so. He met her eyes directly. You're not worthless, Lyra, and I'm going to prove that to you if it takes the rest of this war to do it. Her ears cycled through multiple positions, processing, considering, something else that might have been the beginning of trust or maybe just desperate hope that he was telling the truth. I do not understand humans, she said finally. Nothing you have done aligns with what I was taught about your species. You were supposed to torture me, execute me, demonstrate the brutality and cruelty that justifies sorrow conquest of your worlds. Instead, you provide medical care, adequate rations, and conversation. As if I am person worthy of discourse rather than defeated enemy appropriate only for termination. Because that's what you are, a person worthy of discourse. The fact that our governments are at war doesn't change your fundamental value as an individual. Alex stood to leave, sensing she needed time to process. I'll check on you tomorrow. If you need anything, more food, different accommodations, medical attention, tell the guards. They have instructions to accommodate reasonable requests. He left her there, confused and recovering, her worldview clearly shaken by treatment that contradicted everything she'd been taught to expect from human captors. And Alex found himself hoping he could continue contradicting her expectations, could show her that mercy was possible even between enemies, that surviving didn't make her a failure, that she had value beyond military function. She'd braced for death. He'd shown her basic human compassion instead. Maybe that could be enough to start changing her understanding of what was possible for both of them. Over the following weeks, Alex continued visiting Lyra regularly. What started as command-level oversight of prisoner treatment evolved into genuine conversations, her asking questions about human culture and values, him learning about Sorrel society beyond military briefings. Your soldiers respect you, Lyra observed one day. She'd been watching through the facility's windows as Alex interacted with his unit, giving orders, receiving reports, resolving conflicts with firm but fair authority. They follow your commands because they choose to, not because they fear punishment for disobedience. That is highly unusual command structure by Sorrel standards. It's standard for human military. Fear-based command creates resentment and reduces long-term effectiveness. Respect-based leadership builds loyalty and improves unit cohesion. Alex had brought her data pads with information about human military organization, trying to give her something to occupy her mind beyond the four walls of her recovery facility. How does Sorrow Command work? Through strict dominance hierarchy. Strongest lead, weakest follow. Failure is punished severely, often with execution or permanent demotion. Success is rewarded with elevation in hierarchy and increased authority. It creates highly efficient military force through clear incentive structure. Her ears angled in what he was learning meant discomfort or mild distress. I was weak. Failed to escape. By Sorrel's standards, I deserve death for failure and allowing capture. My continued existence is itself shameful. By human standards, you fought competently, were injured through equipment malfunction beyond your control, and made rational tactical decision to surrender when escape was impossible. That's not weakness, that's practical survival instinct. Alex had been learning her ear language, reading her emotional states through those subtle movements. Right now, she was broadcasting confusion mixed with something that might be cautious hope. Does it feel shameful to you? Being here, being treated well, recovering from your injuries. She considered this seriously. No, it feels confusing. I expected torture and death. Instead, I receive medical care, adequate nutrition, and conversation with enemy commander who treats me as if I am equal rather than inferior defeated enemy. I do not understand the logic of human mercy. What purpose does it serve to expend resources on enemy soldier who provides minimal intelligence value? Because we believe all sentient beings have fundamental dignity, regardless of species or circumstances of capture. Even enemies deserve basic respect and humane treatment. That is weakness from Sorrel perspective. Compassion toward enemies enables their eventual return to combat effectiveness. Logical response is elimination of enemy capacity through execution or permanent disablement. Maybe that's weakness from your culture's view, but it's strength from ours, strength to maintain our values even under circumstances that might justify abandoning them. Alex paused, choosing his words carefully. What will happen to you when this war ends? If there are prisoner exchanges and you're repatriated to Sorrel forces? Her ears flattened completely against her skull, pure fear returning to her expression. I will be executed for failure and capture. Sorrel who surrender or allow themselves to be taken alive are not accepted back into society. I am already considered non-person by my government, dead in all ways except physical cessation. Then don't go back. Apply for asylum, stay here, build new life away from culture that would execute you for the crime of surviving. And do what? I am trained only as soldier. I know nothing of civilian life, human culture, existence outside military structure. And I am Sorrel. Your people would view me with suspicion at best, active hatred at worst. Where would I belong? Who would accept former enemy soldier as anything other than reminder of war? Some wouldn't accept you, others would. Alex moved closer, drawn by the obvious distress in her posture. Humans are more diverse in our perspectives than Sorrel propaganda suggests. Some of us believe in redemption, in judging individuals rather than entire species, in building bridges instead of maintaining eternal enmity. You speak as if you believe these things yourself. Her ears angled toward him, that curious focus she'd started displaying when he challenged her assumptions. I do believe them. You've changed my perspective on Sorrel people, made me see individuals instead of just enemy combatants. If meeting you could change my views, maybe others could change too. He surprised himself with the next question. Would you want to stay? If asylum was possible, if you could build life here, would you choose that over returning to culture that views you as already dead? She was silent for a long moment, her ears cycling through complex patterns he was still learning to interpret. I do not know. I have been soldier my entire adult life. I know hierarchy, orders, clearly defined functions. Freedom to choose my own path is terrifying concept. What if I choose wrong? What if I fail at being civilian, as I failed at being soldier. You didn't fail at being a soldier. And choosing your own path means you get to define what success looks like instead of having arbitrary standards imposed on you. Alex sat across from her, closer than he probably should be to a prisoner, but their relationship had evolved beyond simple captor-captive dynamic. Think about it. You have time before any decisions need to be made. But you have options, Lyra. Your few conquered worlds followed orders without question. This is first time I have questioned anything. What are you questioning now? Everything. My training, my culture's values, the purpose of this war, my own worth beyond military function. Her ears drooped with what looked like depression. I was taught humans are brutal, cruel, inferior species appropriate only for conquest or elimination. Yet you have shown me more compassion than my own commanders ever did. I was taught failure deserves death, yet you tell me I have not failed. I was taught my only value comes from military effectiveness, yet you treat me as if I have worth independent of function. She looked up at him, her eyes, large and expressive despite sorrowful attempts at emotional control, showing vulnerability he hadn't seen before. If everything I was taught is wrong, then who am I? What am I? Without the framework of my training, I do not know how to define myself. Then you figure it out. Explore what you actually think instead of what you were programmed to think. Discover who Lyra is when she's not being a soldier. Alex reached across the space between them, offering his hand. I'll help if you want, but you have to choose it. Freedom means choosing your own path, even when that's terrifying. Lyra looked at his extended hand for a long moment, her ears angling through positions that suggested internal debate. Then slowly, she placed her hand in his, her skin cooler than human, her fingers longer and more elegant, the touch sending unexpected electricity through both of them. I choose to try, she said quietly, to figure out who I am beyond soldier, to explore whether freedom is worth the terror it creates, to see if former enemy can become something else when given opportunity. Her ears angled toward him with focus that felt different from previous attention, more intense, more personal, something that transcended their captor-prisoner relationship and suggested the beginning of genuine connection. Thank you, she added, for showing mercy when you could have shown cruelty, for treating me as person rather than just enemy, for making me believe I might be worth more than military function. Whatever I become, it starts because you chose compassion over violence. Alex tightened his grip on her hand, feeling the weight of responsibility and possibility in equal measure. He'd expected to process a prisoner. Instead, he'd found a person, complex, traumatized, beginning to awaken to possibilities her culture had never allowed her to consider. She'd braced for death. He'd shown her compassion. And somehow that simple choice was creating something neither of them had anticipated. Connection that transcended species, circumstances, and everything both their cultures taught about appropriate relationships between former enemies. You're worth everything, Alex said, meaning it completely. And I'm going to help you see that, whatever it takes. Her ears lifted with what he was certain now was hope, maybe even the beginning of something deeper. And in that moment, Alex knew their relationship had evolved far beyond prisoner and captor into territory neither of them had a map for. But they'd figure it out together. One conversation, one moment of connection, one choice toward compassion at a time. 3 months into Lyra's captivity, though calling it captivity was becoming increasingly inaccurate, the dynamic between them had fundamentally transformed. She was no longer terrified, no longer expected execution, no longer viewed him primarily as enemy captor. But she was struggling with what she had become, not quite prisoner, not quite free, not sorrel soldier anymore, but not human either. I do not belong anywhere, she admitted one evening. Alex had started spending his off-duty hours in her quarters, no longer a cell, more like basic accommodations that respected her personhood. I am not sorrel anymore by their standards. I am not human by yours. I exist in undefined space between cultural categories. Your Lyra, that's its own category. Alex had brought dinner, real food from the mess hall prepared with sorrel dietary requirements in mind, not just basic rations. They ate together now, talked for hours, had developed routines that felt more like companionship than detention. That is not how cultures work. Categories define value, purpose, place in social hierarchies. Without clear category, I have no function, no purpose, no way to understand my value. Her ears were flat with genuine distress. What am I supposed to be now? Who am I supposed to become? Whatever you want to be, whoever you choose to become, you have more freedom now than you ever had as Sorrel soldier. Freedom is terrifying. Sorrel are not taught how to have freedom. We are taught function, hierarchy, clear purpose within military structure. Remove structure and I do not know how to exist. She set down her utensils, her movements precise even in distress. How do humans manage freedom? How do you know what to do when there are no orders to follow? We figure it out. Make choices, learn from mistakes, discover what matters to us through trial and error. Alex moved closer, responding to her obvious need for comfort even as he worried about crossing professional lines that were already thoroughly blurred. You're not alone in this. I'll help however I can. Why? It was becoming her constant question, asked with genuine confusion rather than suspicion. Why help enemy soldier who brings you no strategic advantage, provides no valuable intelligence, offers nothing of tangible value? What do you gain from expending time and energy on my psychological adaptation? I gain seeing you thrive instead of just survive. I gain conversations with someone who challenges my assumptions and teaches me about perspectives I never considered. I gain. He paused, choosing honesty over professional distance. I gain your company, which has become important to me in ways that probably violate multiple regulations, but that I can't bring myself to regret. Her ears shot forward, surprise and something else, something more intense that made his heart race. You value my company. In what capacity? In the capacity of someone I enjoy spending time with. Someone whose perspective I appreciate, whose adaptation I admire, whose presence makes me happier than its absence. Alex knew he was crossing lines now, making this explicitly personal instead of maintaining professional detachment. I know it's inappropriate given our circumstances, but continuing to pretend otherwise seems more dishonest than admitting the truth. Sorrel do not have emotional framework that aligns with what you are describing. We have dominance bonding within military hierarchy, reproductive partnerships for genetic continuity, temporary strategic alliances for practical purposes. We do not have concept of emotional attachment without functional purpose. Humans do. We form connections based on affection, compatibility, shared experiences, genuine care for another person's well-being. No functional purpose required beyond the connection itself. That seems profoundly inefficient from military perspective. It's deeply inefficient, also deeply meaningful. He risked moving closer, close enough to see the intricate patterns in her skin that shifted with emotion she couldn't completely control. What do you feel about me, Lyra, if you're comfortable answering? Her ears cycled through multiple positions, processing, considering, probably attempting to translate her experiences into language that didn't quite exist in Sorrel cultural framework. I feel safer with you than I have felt in my entire existence. I feel seen as individual rather than interchangeable military unit. I feel curious about you, about humans, about possibilities I was never trained to consider. She paused, her ears trembling slightly. I also feel something I do not have adequate vocabulary for. Heightened awareness of your presence, desire for your approval and continued company, physical responses when you are near that I do not fully understand but that are not unpleasant. That might be attraction, affection, the beginning of emotional attachment. Alex's heart was racing now, aware they were venturing into territory with profound implications for both of them. What do you want, Lyra? Not what you were trained to want, not what sorrow culture dictates. What do you actually want? I want to not feel broken and incomplete. I want to understand these confusing emotions I am experiencing. I want to belong somewhere, even if it is just with you rather than in larger cultural context. Her hand found his, the touch deliberate rather than accidental. I want to touch you and not have it be clinical medical contact. I want to know what human affection feels like instead of just observing it. I want things I do not even have words for yet. We can explore that, carefully at your pace, with clear communication about boundaries and what you're comfortable with. His hand tightened on hers. But I need you to understand something crucial. You're not broken. What you're feeling is normal emotional development that was suppressed by your military conditioning. Learning to feel fully is healing, not weakness. Prove it. Her ears angled toward him with determination mixed with vulnerability. Show me what human affection feels like. Demonstrate that vulnerability and emotion are not weaknesses. Help me understand what I am feeling by experiencing it rather than just discussing it theoretically. Alex leaned closer, moving slowly enough to give her time to retreat if she wanted. Are you sure? Once we cross this line, our relationship changes fundamentally. I need to know you're choosing this freely, not because you feel obligated or because you think I expect it. I am choosing this. Perhaps for first time in my life, I am making choice based on what I want rather than what is required or expected. Her free hand reached up to touch his face, the gesture tentative but genuine. Show me, Alex. Show me what pleasure feels like when it is given freely rather than extracted through violence or demanded through hierarchy. Prove to me that vulnerability can be strength. He kissed her then, gently at first, respecting her inexperience with affection, giving her time to adapt to the foreign sensation. Her lips were cooler than human, shaped slightly differently, but the emotional resonance was unmistakable. When they finally separated, Lyra's ears were angled in ways he'd never seen before. Joy mixed with wonder, mixed with overwhelming emotion that his growing understanding of her expressions identified as the sorrow equivalent of falling in love. That was, she struggled for words in a language that didn't have vocabulary for what she was feeling. I understand now why humans value emotional connection, why you consider this meaningful rather than just efficient. I felt everything. Safety and desire and connection and possibilities I never knew existed. That's just the beginning, Alex promised. There's so much more. But we take it at your pace, communicate clearly about everything, make sure you're always comfortable with what we're exploring. I trust you. The simplicity of her statement carried profound weight. You have never hurt me, never lied to me, never treated me as less than person deserving of respect. I trust you to show me what I have been missing, to teach me how to be something other than soldier, to help me become whoever I am meant to be. They spent that evening exploring carefully, physical affection balanced with emotional vulnerability, pleasure given and received with genuine care, connection deepening beyond anything either had anticipated when this began. Lyra had braced for death. Alex had shown her compassion, and now they were discovering what could grow from that foundation, relationship that transcended species, circumstances, and everything both their cultures taught about appropriate connections. It was inappropriate, probably violated multiple regulations, definitely complicated his command position. But looking at Lyra, at her ears angled with joy, her expression showing wonder, her entire being radiating happiness she'd never been allowed to feel, Alex couldn't bring himself to regret it. Sometimes the right thing and the appropriate thing were different. He was choosing right over appropriate, choosing her over regulations, choosing connection over professional distance. And based on the way she was looking at him, with trust and affection and something deeper that was just beginning to emerge, she was choosing him back. They'd figure out the complications later. For now, this was enough, more than enough. It was everything. 6 months into their relationship, because that's what it had become, despite the complications. Alex and Lyra were navigating territory neither of them had training for. She was officially granted asylum after extensive review of her case, given probationary civilian status pending the war's conclusion and formal peace negotiations, which meant she wasn't his prisoner anymore. Just his, what? Partner, lover, something neither language had adequate terms for. My command is not pleased about our relationship, Alex mentioned during one of their evenings together. They'd moved into shared quarters by now, proper accommodations that respected both their needs. They're concerned about security implications, questioning my objectivity, worried this is some kind of long-term infiltration strategy on your part. Is our relationship compromising your military effectiveness? Her ears angled with concern that was becoming increasingly easy to read. If I am causing problems for your command position, perhaps I should. No, you're not causing problems. Small-minded people who can't imagine former enemies becoming anything other than eternal adversaries are causing problems. He pulled her closer on their shared couch. I'm not giving up our relationship to satisfy their prejudices about appropriate partnerships. Sorrel Command would execute me for fraternizing with enemy species. They would execute you as well for corrupting loyal Sorrel soldier, though they would not consider me loyal anymore. She settled against him with comfort that spoke to months of adaptation. We are both traitors to our respective societies by conventional standards. Does that trouble you? No. Both our societies could use more traitors if it means building bridges instead of maintaining eternal conflict. Alex kissed her temple, casual affection that had become natural over months of carefully built intimacy. You're worth any professional complications, worth any judgment from people who can't understand what we have. The war wound down gradually, not through decisive victory, but through exhausted stalemate that eventually forced diplomatic negotiations. Humans and Sorrel established uneasy peace, border agreements, protocols for prisoner repatriation, and eventual normalization of relations. I have received notification about repatriation procedures, Lyra informed him when the official documents arrived. I am not being repatriated. I have been formally declared non-person by Sorrel government. My capture and continued survival resulted in citizenship revocation. I do not legally exist by Sorrel legal frameworks anymore. But you exist by human law. You have asylum status, pending citizenship approval, legal recognition as refugee with full rights. Alex took her hands, holding her gaze. You're free, Lyra. Genuinely free to build whatever life you want here. I want life with you. Is that permitted by human customs? Her directness still surprised him sometimes, even after months together. It's not just permitted, it's encouraged when both people are genuinely committed. He'd been carrying something for weeks, waiting for the right moment, the right context. Which is why I wanted to ask, will you bond with me? Human marriage or adapted Sorrel partnership ceremony, or whatever ritual makes sense for us. I want permanent, recognized partnership with you. Her ears shot straight up, pure joy mixed with shock. You want permanent bonding, with former enemy soldier who brings no status advantage, no strategic alliance value, no functional benefits according to traditional partnership metrics. With Lyra, person I love beyond any rational explanation, person who changed my entire understanding of what's possible across species barriers, person I want to build future with regardless of what anyone else thinks. He showed her the ring he'd been carrying, human tradition adapted for Sorrel hand structure. So what do you say? Want to make this official? Yes. The word emerged with harmonics his translator couldn't capture, but that needed no translation. Yes to permanent bonding, to building future together, to being yours as you are mine. You saw me when I expected death. You showed me life, not just survival but actual living, feeling, connecting. You taught me vulnerability is strength, emotional attachment is valuable, that I am worthy of care beyond functional purpose. Yes, I will bond with you permanently. They formalized their partnership through ceremonies that blended both human and adapted sorrel traditions, creating ritual that honored both their backgrounds while acknowledging neither fully captured what they'd built together. Lyra's birth family didn't attend. She was non-person to them now, erased from official records. But Alex's family came, cautiously welcoming her with the kind of acceptance that suggested love could overcome prejudice given time and genuine connection. "Do you regret it?" Lyra asked during their bonding celebration, surrounded by the few people who'd chosen to support their controversial partnership. Choosing enemy soldier over easier relationships, facing judgment and professional complications, becoming traitor to your species' conventional expectations. Never, not for a single moment. Alex pulled her close, heedless of the watching crowd. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Every complication has been worth it. Every judgment we've faced has been negligible compared to what we've built." Years passed. They remained together through peace negotiations, through political changes in both human and sorrel governments, through the slow, painful process of former enemies learning to coexist without active warfare. Their relationship became model for others, proof that former enemies could become partners, that species differences mattered less than personal compatibility, that love could transcend boundaries both cultures had believed were absolute. "We helped change things," Alex observed, reading news about increasing human-sorrel partnerships, about policy reforms recognizing interspecies relationships, about younger generations questioning the hatreds their parents had accepted as inevitable. "We proved that showing mercy creates possibilities violence destroys," Lyra corrected. "That choosing compassion over cruelty, vulnerability over dominance, connection over enmity, creates something neither species achieves alone." "Do you remember when we met?" Alex asked during quiet evening at home, real home they'd built together, incorporating both their needs and preferences. "You were terrified, expecting execution, braced for death." "I remember. You showed me mercy when I expected cruelty. You gave me medical care when I anticipated torture. You treated me as person when I had been trained to expect dehumanization." Her hand found his naturally. "Everything I am now exists because you chose compassion over violence in that moment. You chose to trust when you'd been taught humans were monsters, chose to open yourself to possibilities your training said were impossible, chose vulnerability when everything in your background taught you it was fatal weakness." He kissed her gently. "Thank you for being brave enough to accept kindness when you'd been trained to expect only cruelty. Thank you for showing me what human mercy looks like, what emotional connection feels like, what it means to be valued for who I am rather than what I can contribute functionally." Her ears angled toward him with contentment that needed no translation. "I came to you as enemy expecting death. You gave me life instead, not just survival but actual living, feeling, belonging. Thank you for that impossible gift." They sat together in their home, two former enemies who'd become everything to each other. Lyra had faced death and found pleasure instead, not just physical pleasure, but the profound pleasure of being seen, valued, loved for who she was rather than what she could provide or what category she fit. That single choice, Alex showing mercy when cruelty would have been justified, had changed both their lives completely, had proved that redemption was possible, that emotional awakening transformed everything, that empathy could turn enemies into lovers when both people chose vulnerability over violence. "I love you," Lyra said simply, "for seeing person instead of enemy, for teaching me to feel instead of just function, for showing me that survival can become living when approached with compassion rather than mere endurance. I love you too, for being brave enough to change, for trusting me despite everything, for building this extraordinary life with me." Alex held her close. "Thank you for accepting mercy instead of expecting death. Thank you for letting me prove that pleasure, emotional, physical, psychological, matters more than efficiency or appropriate cultural categories." She'd braced for death. He'd shown her pleasure, the pleasure of compassion, connection, being fully known and completely accepted. And from that foundation, they'd built love that transcended everything both their cultures believed about enemies and impossibility and appropriate relationships. Sometimes the most profound connections begin with showing mercy when cruelty is expected, offering pleasure when pain seems inevitable, choosing compassion when violence would be easier and more justifiable. They'd made that choice, built everything from it, proved that former enemies could become beloved partners, that species boundaries were less significant than personal connection, that love was choice transcending biology and culture, and every limitation society tried to impose. "Careful," Lyra murmured, echoing a joke that had become their private language. "You're making me believe redemption is possible, that mercy matters more than efficiency, that I deserve happiness beyond functional purpose." "Good, because all of that is true, and I'll keep proving it to you every day for the rest of our lives." Alex kissed her. "You deserve everything."